It all hinges on a top-secret experiment. Young couple comes home from the hospital with their newborn baby. A week goes by and the baby still hasn't produced a bowel movement.
Maybe the baby's just constipated.
No. This is a very special baby. This baby processes energy differently.
I haven't had a bowel movement in 6 days. I haven't taken a piss either.
Hi everyone, welcome to another installment of I Effin' Love Cinema, and today we're going to be talking about Richard Kelly's 2008 film, Southland Tales. Southland Tales is an incredibly ambitious film. It is a sprawling story that just goes places, and it goes in all the places. It goes in too many places, arguably. And it all adds up to... I don't know. I finished watching this movie and I can't tell you what this movie is about. The Rock is in it and he plays an actor with split personalities, and one of the personalities is with a porn star who has ties to neo-Marxists. And then, I mean, that's just one part of it. Sean William Scott plays two characters who can't poop. God, what else? Wallace Shawn is like this Elon Musk figure who has this renewable perpetual motion machine that creates wireless electricity, and no, I don't know how to describe this, man. I really wish I could tell you guys what this movie is about, and it all culminates to one of the most baffling endings ever. You know, I really wish I could tell you guys that this is some secret masterpiece, some like hidden gem that was hated at its time and misunderstood. But honestly, this movie is just a mess. And the worst part is that it's so wonky in its pacing. Like, some parts of the movie are really entertaining and cool, and then parts of it are just slogs, just hard to get to. And you're watching all these characters and you don't even understand most of the time what they're even trying to accomplish. So you have like this fake CNN thing that's just constantly filling in the gaps because the movie does such a poor job of letting you know what the hell any of this means or what's going on. Also, it has Justin Timberlake doing voiceover throughout almost the entire movie. You know you're in bad shape when you have exposition all the way into Act 3. And this movie ends with exposition. It ends with a voiceover line that just fills in a huge gap that we just didn't understand until the very end of the movie. Like, you have to understand this thing to understand anything that's what's going on, and it's like in the last 30 seconds, like, oh yeah, like I know that guy. It's so wild, this movie. When you think about Donnie Darko, yeah, it's known for being this trippy movie, but primarily it's a coming-of-age story. And that's why people watch it several times. Not so much because they don't understand it, but because it's a movie about being an outcast teenager, and a lot of people can relate to that. Southland Tales also has all these crazy elements about it, but unlike Donnie Darko, it's primarily satire. It's political, social satire. The thing is, it takes place in this made-up world that, in order for it to connect to our world in a way that we can relate to it, has to explain all this crazy convoluted things. There are too many layers of this movie, and none of those layers are relatable at all. So the only reason you have to come back to this movie is to understand it. On top of that, Donnie Darko is a movie with a beloved soundtrack that uses its music very effectively and has some fantastic cinematography, and it's sprinkled pretty evenly throughout the movie. And instead of Echo and the Bunnymen or the Mad World cover, we get this. And yeah, scenes like this are creative. But they're very few and far between. For the most part, it's just shot, reverse shot, and that's dull. That's dull to watch, especially in a 2.5 hour long movie. So now it's time to answer the big question: is Southland Tales a good movie? No. Sadly, on its own, it's just kind of a slog. It's unrelatable. It's confusing, and it's not gonna inspire most people to watch it again. So, okay, we have our answer, right? But let's mythbuster this. Let's do an Adam and Jamie here, because no, the movie is not good, right? But can it be good? I mean, Richard Kelly did make Donnie Darko after all, and I didn't understand Donnie Darko on the first viewing, and I liked it way more the more I watched it. I'm gonna rewatch this movie a few more times, and then once I feel like I have a better understanding of it, I'll give you guys another take on it.
Wait, what is phase two? You didn't tell me there was a phase two.
Krista, no offense to you and your little career makeover plan, but we are trying to impact the outcome of an election.
Proposition 69. To Krista, that number had one meaning, and one meaning only. To everyone else, it was a proposition on the ballot to restrict the powers of the oppressive institution known as U.S. Ident.
Okay, well, I think I'm starting to get it. When I was 15, I had a substitute teacher, Mr. Mendez, and he was a substitute teacher, so he was mostly just kind of like hanging out, right? So it was getting towards the end of class, and we're talking. And at school, I was the Donnie Darko kid. I think everybody had that kid at school who had Donnie Darko and let everybody borrow it. I remember there was this one guy. He borrowed it for a month, watched it every day. Okay, but anyways. And I say, yeah, I love Donnie Darko because you have to see it a few times to understand what's going on. And he said, and he, in this sort of like buzz killing sort of way, it's like, several times, huh? Well, if you got to see it several times to like it, I think that sounds like a bad movie. And I was insulted. But this guy was probably my, late 20s or maybe early 30s, around my age now. I get that feeling now because I don't think Southland Tales is a great movie, but it is a more understandable movie. And the thing is, with Richard Kelly, at least with Southland Tales and Donnie Darko, if you're going to see either of them, see them twice. At least twice. This movie is not as relatable, so it's harder to come back to this than it is to come back to Donnie Darko. But I was very political when I was a teenager. I was into punk rock, I was anti-Bush, I was against the Iraq War. So watching this for me definitely taps back into those feelings. It helps put me back in that mind space, the trash reality TV of the day too. It's all here. This movie is a big snapshot of politics and pop culture in the mid to late 2000s, the later part of the second term of the Bush administration. And when you see it like that, when you try to understand it like that, its satire is easier to read, and that definitely helps. But what really makes this movie a better experience on second and third viewings, you know who the characters are. Like, no matter how incomprehensible the first viewing was, you at least walk away from it knowing that Boxer was an actor who was having an affair with Krista, who was a porn star, right? And you understand the neo-Marxists, and you understand what each individual character is doing, at least by the end of the first watching. So the second and third watching really is following and seeing all the dots connect. Now, I'm going to be real with you guys. I cannot right now, after watching it, tell you what this movie is about, because it is still such a huge, convoluted thing. It's still hard to wrap my head around it. This movie only has chapters 4, 5, and 6 of the Southland tales, right? It's like Star Wars. The first 3 chapters are graphic novels. And get this, the movie premiered before any of the comics were out. So, how could anybody, when this movie first came out, understand this movie? You only had half the story. See, the plan was originally to have the comics out before the theatrical release, but the producers demanded that the movie premiere at Cannes to sort of build hype a little bit, if there was any hype to be had at all. Nobody understood what this movie was about when it first came out. Of course, it's going to have a bad reception, which of course begs the question, is this movie any better if you read the graphic novels?
What will happen if they shake hands?
The fourth dimension will collapse upon itself. You stupid bitch.
All right, so I just finished reading the comics, and I gotta say, they were a pretty fun read. You know, the art was kind of hit or miss, if you ask me. But what really carried all this was the writing, which really isn't all that different from the movie's writing when it comes to both the structure of it or the dialogue or anything like that. Well, okay, there is one big difference, right? And that's that in the comics, Krista's intelligence shines through a lot more. It feels like in the movie, she seems like more of an idiot. Here in the comics, her cunning, her cleverness, all that it's on full display. It's kind of her defining feature, and then the porn star stuff is in the background, and I feel that's sort of the other way around in the movie. But that's really the only real difference between the comics and the movie in terms of writing. The thing is that unlike the movie, which starts with chapter 4, we start with chapter 1 here. So we actually get to follow the story from the beginning. And when you understand the comics, it's actually a surprisingly simple story. The only reason why this story seems complicated is because of the way the movie is structured. It's actually pretty impressive, the scope that Richard Kelly went into with this whole story. So I'm going to go ahead and just start breaking it down. I'm not going to do the entire story because that video is up. You can see that right now if you choose. So what I'm going to do is just kind of give you guys a quick summary of the story that is in the comics and also just a general setup for the movie. So after I'm done setting this up, I would recommend you go back and watch the movie again. Okay, so in order to understand the Southland tales, we need to understand Karl Marx. Marxist, socialism, whatever you want to call it, right? It starts with Karl Marx. Now, Karl Marx had a wife, Jenny von Westphalen. Wendy and Karl had a daughter, Inga von Westphalen. And she is an architect of the Trier Corporation, and she moves her way up the corporate ladder. On July 4th, 2005, 2 nuclear bombs go off in Texas, one in Abilene and one on the El Paso border. And that is this universe's 9/11. That sort of spurned on the creation of the NSA, which pretty much unfolds the same way it did in the real world, where it essentially spies on all U.S. citizens under the guise of security. The only difference is that in Southland Tales, it's just the Republicans. It's just a Republican think tank and a Republican organization because the Republicans have almost complete control of all branches of the U.S. government, and the Democratic Party has collapsed into the neo-Marxists, who are seen as terrorists. So instead of the NSA, they call it U.S. IDENT. So another byproduct of July 4th, 2005 is Inga von Westphalen working with the Trier Corporation, securing a deal to create 900-foot-long zeppelins that will carry cargo across the desert safely. And this is an incredibly lucrative contract that nets the Trier Corporation $112 billion in profit in 1 year. And so they start working with the government, and eventually they present something called fluid karma, which is something they've been researching for a while. Essentially, they have been drilling into the mantle of the earth, and one day they crack it open and they find this fluid that coils around the earth's core like a snake. And in that fluid is the serpent trench. In the serpent trench is a snake who is at the center of the world. That's it. I'm not crazy. I'm just relaying what a crazy person wrote. So essentially, the Trier Corporation is able to get this fluid and using that in combination with the currents of the ocean, create fluid karma, which is essentially electricity in the form of Wi-Fi. Only it can extend for hundreds of miles. And it can power anything that requires electricity or a motor to run. Another one of the projects that the Trier Corporation is working with in tandem with the U.S. military is serpentine dream theory, where they take that fluid karma and turn it into an injectable drug. And this drug allows soldiers to communicate telepathically. That's the main sort of purpose of it. The thing is, taking fluid karma allows you to see first backwards in time, and then once you do enough fluid karma, you'll also start seeing forward in time. So one day in Nevada, there appears a giant Texas-shaped time aberration that essentially grabs an airplane in midair. And on this airplane is Krista Kapowski, aka Krista now. And everybody on that airplane passes out except for Krista. And Krista walks around the cabin until she hears a demonic voice outside. And when she opens the door, she not only finds that there is no pressure pulling her out, but that there's a giant 7-headed snake in the sky talking to her. And it essentially relays a prophecy to her and gives her psychic powers. So the Trier Corporation is able to intercept United 23, which is the airplane in question here. And they are able to, at first, interview Krista. And then once they find out she's psychic, they end up experimenting on her. And Dr. Kunstler, that's her name. All right. Again, don't get mad at me, YouTube. Does a treatment where she hypnotizes Krista and reads the book of Revelations to her in its entirety. When she is done with that, she asks Krista to foretell the end of the world. And Krista comes back with the Power screenplay, which is essentially her prophecy. And in the prophecy, capitalism is destroyed and God is dethroned. So Baron von Westphalen decides to put this plan into motion by working with the neo-Marxists to execute this wacky plan. So this is where Boxer Santeros comes into play.
Freedom.
You've been lying to me.
Boxer Santeros is an NFL player turned movie star, and he's also the son-in-law to Republican vice presidential nominee Bobby Frost. And one day, on a Trier-sponsored scavenger hunt, Boxer is kidnapped and brought to the desert. While we're learning about Boxer's story, we also learn about the Trier Corporation going in and capturing the burnt body of Boxer's kidnapper, and that's where the comics start. Then he wakes up in the middle of the Nevada desert, lost and not knowing where to go. It's at this time that Fortunio Balducci is on his houseboat with Krista now and Ronald and Tab Taverner, but we're going to get to them soon. Fortunio is stuck in Nevada as he doesn't have a way to cross the California border and go back to the Southland. So Krista tells him to meet up with her at Buffalo Bill, where she might be able to sneak him out. On his way there, he runs into Boxer, who was passed out on the side of the road. So Fortunio and Boxer drive over to Buffalo Bill's, where they meet up with Krista, and Krista and Boxer hit it off immediately and go hook up in a room. While he's in a room, Boxer starts to read The Power, her prophetic screenplay. He gets obsessed with it and decides to help produce it. After that, they all head back to Los Angeles, where Krista takes him to various places in order to quote-unquote research her role. But in reality, we're just meeting the real-life inspirations for many of the people that we meet in the Southland Tales story. Boxer has amnesia. He can't remember anything prior to waking up in the desert. The closest thing to a memory he has is a vision where he is chased by the snake at the center of the earth through a maze. He comes to a portal, and in order to escape the snake, he jumps through it, only to encounter Ronald Taverner, who, like Boxer, also has amnesia and can't remember anything past his own arrival in Nevada. So Krista eventually takes Boxer out to this black farm in the middle of the desert. And this is all to fulfill something that is prophesized in The Power, something that Boxer also knows about and agrees to take part in. Essentially, he gets a tattoo of all the world's religions on his body, and all this being the armor of God. And in doing so, he accepts his role as the sacrificial guardian in the prophecy. And then he ends the comic books by passing out on the beach that we find him in at the beginning of the movie. So about Ronald.
I've had this recurring dream.
Tell me about it.
So Ronald, like I said, also has amnesia. He is the son of Tab Taverner, a former mayor of Hermosa Beach and a secret neo-Marxist. Tab tells Ronald to follow him down to the base of the boat where his twin brother Roland is tied up and sedated. He is told that Roland was part of various military experiments and for his safety has to stay hidden and sedated until the federal government stops looking for him. He is told to ride with Zora Carmichaels as she transports his brother over to the neo-Marxist base at Venice Beach, where he is told that he is going to impersonate his brother as a cop in the UPU-2 and take part of the staged shooting of an interracial couple that will be filmed by Boxer Santeros, aka Jericho Kane. So about Ronald's twin brother. Roland was a veteran of the Iraq War. He served alongside Pilot Abilene, who was a famous actor before he got drafted into the army. And in an attempt to get out of the military sooner, volunteered to take part of the secret experiment called Serpentine Dream Theory, the one I mentioned earlier. It is during the first operation, under the influence of fluid karma, that Roland gets confused in the crossfire and throws a grenade at Pilot Abilene, blowing up in his face. Now, Roland believes that he killed his best friend, and that's why Ronald/Roland are so depressed throughout the movie. But it turns out that Pilot is actually alive, and Pilot is the person who is narrating the entire Southland tale, both comics and movies, to his buddies in the army. And then all this is the Frost family who are in the middle of this game that they think they're going to win. And that's pretty much it, honestly. You know, when you tell it the way the comic books and the movie tells it, it seems so much more confusing than it is. But when you just lay out the beats group by group, it's actually all pretty simple. Karl Marx's grandson wants to destroy capitalism and dethrone God. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell, right? It's so crazy. Like this huge, wild story all comes down to this one guy wanting to avenge his grandfather's legacy. So look, I'll tell you guys this. I genuinely believe that knowing all this makes the movie better in retrospect. In my head, the theatrical cut is a much stronger film. But ultimately, the structured movie, it still has a lot of flaws. And a lot of that is because like the movie never settles into a groove. It's because the constant stopping for this like exposition. But from what I understand, the canned cut lacks all that. So, having seen the theatrical cut multiple times, having read the graphic novels, I'm going to go ahead and watch the canned cut. Then I'll finally know for sure if Southland Tales is a good movie.
I want to suck your dick. If you don't let me suck your dick, I'm gonna kill myself.
Wait.
I came up with the idea for this video after watching Southland Tales and being tremendously disappointed. Donnie Darko is such an important movie to me that I didn't want to believe he can make such a bad movie. So I originally planned for this video to be much longer because I thought it was so bad that I would have to watch his entire filmography and put it all in the context of Southland Tales and its lore and its story and its themes and all that to really conclusively decide if this movie was good at all. And don't get me wrong, I'm still going to be making those videos. Hit like and subscribe. But I can honestly say that at this point, I can conclusively say whether or not Southland Tales is a good movie. And it's so crazy because it's basically the same movie. It unfolds in the same order. A couple of scenes are moved around, but mostly the same movie. It's the same story with the same characters. They all do the same thing, same music and all that. But the story unfolds much more organically. It's much more of a movie. It has a conclusive beginning, middle, and end, and it just kind of goes to those places without stopping to explain itself over and over. I mean, Justin Timberlake's voiceover narration is still here, but it's brief and it's spread out so you don't notice it as much. Dwayne Johnson's performance benefits the most in this cut. Even if you don't know about the whole Boxer Jericho split thing, his bouncing back and forth between being fidgety and nervous and this renegade cop persona is super entertaining to watch. And if you do know the whole Boxer Jericho thing, it just makes it all the more fascinating. I mean, don't get me wrong, the movie is longer, but that's because every scene is allowed room to breathe. And one thing that the theatrical cut just does not get across at all is just how much of a hangout, casual kickback vibe the movie is for a lot of its first half. So you enjoy spending time with these characters and you get the time to do it. And a lot of dialogue scenes that are just stilted and awkward and drag on in the theatrical cut are way more fun here. And the movie on the whole is just way more entertaining. It's crazy the difference it makes when you have a director who is able to just tell his story, and that same director, when he is being rushed and has to make all these compromises, it really does feel like an entirely different experience. If you're gonna watch this movie, start here. Start with the can cut. Get the Arrow video. I don't know if you could. I don't know if you could stream it somewhere or something, but find a way to watch the can cut. And if you enjoy that, then read the comics, because this movie is so much fun and it's cool and it's mysterious, and it's a damn shame the theatrical cut even exists. It's an even worse shame that up until the Arrow release, that was pretty much the only way to see this movie, because Richard Kelly's original vision for this movie and the overall story, the overall Southland tale was fantastic. It's great. I firmly believe that no movie should require homework to enjoy. Period. No exceptions, including this movie. But what I'm saying is the movie by itself, the can cut by itself, is fantastic and deserves to be the primary definitive edition of this film. It's crazy when you find out how this movie was made, that the producers, and there was a lot of them, they were all nervous about the scope and how crazy the story was and how hard it was to follow. And through production and pre-production, they put all their faith in Richard Kelly. They let him basically do what he wanted and trusted in his vision. And they even trusted it throughout most of post-production. But for some reason, they got cold feet right at the very end. And that's a bummer, because they should have trusted Richard Kelly's vision for all this. Because I think that for people like me who were big Donnie Darko fans, who were looking forward to what Richard Kelly did next and were anticipating Southland Tales, the news of the can cut deflated a lot of our excitement for it. So if that would have never happened and we were just given the comics, and all of us Donnie Darko dorks, Donnie Dorkos, we're given the time to read the comics and then watch his vision, the completed version of the can cut, because the can cut does have a couple of wonky and missing CGI effects for sure. It's not too bad, but it is there. He would have had another cult classic on his hand. Easy. Maybe not as beloved and instantly accessible as Donnie Darko, but definitely a beloved film, especially for us suburban punk rockers who were listening to a lot of Epitaph bands, a lot of Fat Wreck bands. We would have ate this up, and this would have been such a great film, such a celebrated film, and the trajectory of his career would have likely played out way different. But unfortunately, things played out the way it did. You know, when you take it all in, when you take in the graphic novel prequels and the can cut, and you see it all together, you put it all together, it's amazing, actually. It's a hell of a ride. It's a hell of a fun little world that Richard Kelly crafted for Southland Tales. And I'm glad that I got to experience it. Honestly, this was a movie that I've been curious about since I was like 15. And I finally got to see it, and I finally got the whole scope of it. And it feels like this weird moment of closure for me when it comes to Richard Kelly's career, because I have only seen the box in Donnie Darko, and without Southland Tales there, you don't really understand his vision as a director. And I think he deserved better. And I've heard that he's trying to resurrect Southland Tales and put it in a modern context. And I hope he gets to do that, because this is a lot of fun. This is a cool film. This is a cool story lore, all that. So if you like the movie, you don't have to do the homework, but it's fun if you do. Is Southland Tales a good movie? It's okay. Psych! So is Southland Tales a good movie? Dude, yeah. It's fucking great. Yeah. It's an awesome movie. Go watch it.